Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker, embedded and, well, lovely. We have quite a project heavy show this week, but there is still some stuff from funding websites along with some new products and software updates and of course the mystery box competition. So let's get started. We're going to switch things up a bit and start this week's show with funding website things. And we're beginning on crowd supply with RISC-V. Or RISC-V, I suppose it should be. I always get told off for saying RISC-V rather than RISC-V, but it's what it says, it's a V. I get it. Romans, they're still around. RISC-V is a high-end Linux-capable RISC-V development board based on the Polar Fire system on chip. Now, the Polar Fire system on chip has made the rounds a few times. There are a few other boards on crowd supply currently that use it. This one is designed to be sort of a high-end board. It will cost a lot more, and if there is such a thing as a premium RISC-V FPGA-enabled board, then this is it. So as you can see, the idea is that this is a stackable board that you can create clusters out of. And there's a few details here, and I'll be the first to admit I don't necessarily understand all of it. There's a lot about RISC-V and FPGAs. When you get right down to the bare bones of it, there's a lot about, you know, instruction sets for microcontrollers that is just way above my level of knowledge, and I'm perfectly happy to admit that. But if you are someone who is already working with this kind of stuff or wants to get into it and just is someone that likes to get a high quality version or somewhere near the top of what is available right now, when this goes live, it's certainly one that you might want to keep an eye on. Now, rather than blindly read through the features and specs on this, I want to point you in the direction of a video which will really help you understand RISC-V if it's something that you've heard but you've never really come across before. And that is a video by Robert Baruch, and I may have mispronounced your name, I apologize. And this is a fantastic little board that uses LMI and something else, CMOS chips, in order to show how a RISC-V instruction set can work. Now, it's a 40-minute video and it's very dense, and much like the crowd supply article, I'm not going to explain everything that goes into it. But if you are curious about RISC-V and you want an in-depth and visual way of seeing how it works, yeah, this is a fantastic video. I will make sure there's a link to this in the description, as well as the crowd supply page. But yes, as I mentioned, this hasn't launched yet. There's no price for it yet. They've already said it's likely to be more expensive than the other boards that are already on crowd supply and elsewhere that have the same system on chip. But it's something that it's definitely worth following if you are interested in RISC-V and using FPGAs. It's definitely something that, while I'm not clever enough to actually program myself and really get my head around, I'd love to get a little RISC-V. I'm getting a RISC-V development board because I ordered one of those little development boards that I featured on the show last week, I believe. And I'm really looking forward to tinkering with it, but as always with me, I'll probably only have time to do quite a light kind of surface level delve into it, and I'm hoping that sometime later in my life I will have a retirement where I can spend entire days just going through my collection and working with everything. That's not the life I live right now. But RISC-V is very exciting to me because it's a completely open source instruction set. There are instruction sets for different chips out there. I'm going to say ARM, but I don't necessarily know if this is particular to ARM, but just to give you an example, ARM create chips, but they also have their own proprietary instruction set. You have to use theirs, you can't define it yourself. And I don't know if ARM do this, but I know there are various other chip makers, instruction sets out there that you have to pay royalties to even use. And that can be a hell of a barrier of entry to people that just want to learn and don't necessarily want to spend money on the instruction set. RISC-V is open and it is making waves. If you keep an eye on DIY and embedded news in general, you will notice that it's cropping up more and more. And I think that is a good thing. Anywho, there will be a link in the doobly-doo to both of these, and yeah, this video is fantastic, check it out. Next, I would like to revisit Precursor, which we featured on the show some weeks ago. And at the time, I think I was a little taken in by the form factor of it and the fact that it can be used as a communication device, but sold it a bit short, mostly just calling it an FPGA smartphone, when it is a lot more than that. So just to reiterate, Precursor is a mobile, open hardware RISC-V system-on-chip development kit. There is RISC-V again. And it uses an FPGA. Well, it has dual FPGAs, in fact. It has two. And the idea behind it is that, yes, it can be used for a communication device, but it can be used for a lot more than that. The power of FPGAs, while again, I am not someone who is intelligent enough to really get in there and do the work on them, I'd have to spend a long time learning that. But I do understand the power of being able to compile your processor, knowing exactly what goes into it, knowing that no matter what happens, there's no secret backdoors to your processor. There's no instructions that can be given that you are not aware of. If you follow security news, you'll have seen over the years that there are so many chips that are probably the chip in the computer I'm using right now has critical vulnerabilities and flaws. Now, you'd have to be smart enough to know what those vulnerabilities were, but if you were compiling your own processor, at least you would know what you had put into it, and if there was any issues like that, it would be something that at least you could say was your own fault, I guess. But yeah, I wanted to just come back to Precursor because I feel like I sold it a little bit short. There is a lot more to this than just a FPGA smartphone. I think this chart they have on their page is really useful as well. It really kind of gets into your head exactly where this thing lands. Because on the one side you have, hackable, and these are all the things that we're very used to. It's an Arduino Raspberry Pi. It's accessible ways to change physical hardware with code. And then on the right hand side you have, phones, Android phones, iPhones, whatever. And then in the top middle, Librem 5 and Pine Phone, which are open sourced phones but still use proprietary systems on chips. And again, that goes back to that idea of you have this phone which is completely open source. You can trust it absolutely, apart from the fact that if you are really security conscious, any processor that you have that you didn't compile yourself could have things on it that you do not want. If you are working in the security industry, you probably know that any backdoor is something that is unacceptable. And while it does seem that some people are maybe a little bit over the top as to how much security they personally need, it is something that has to be considered, and it's something we all should at least on a surface level understand. And before moving on, you have FOMU and Cryptor, which, as it says here, are some of the FPGA development boards that share Precursor's ability to compile its primary CPU. So in short, I apologize Precursor, I shouldn't have called you a phone. You are a fully fledged, pocket-ready FPGA development kit, and yes, I think you are lovely. And just before moving on, I can't even remember if it had launched the last time I talked about it, so just in case it hasn't, the prices for it are here. It's $512 for a fully assembled and tested one, and there is also a limited edition one. Now, of course, these prices are high, especially if you aren't necessarily completely savvy as to why this is a cool thing. Also bear in mind that this isn't being made by some massive company. This is a couple of hackers out of Singapore, I believe, who are doing this, as far as I know, completely off their own back. This is something that, because of its price, you're only going to buy it if you really, really love it, if you really, really want it, and if you really, really think it would be useful. But yeah, it is way more of a complex project than I originally gave it credit for. And I really hope there are more things like this in the future. I really hope as well that by the time they come out, and there may be more in the price range that I can afford, I'm smart enough to use them. It is once again time for the mystery box competition. In case this is the first time you're watching the show, every week I put my hand into this mystery box, which has a very high-tech plastic bag over the top to stop me cheating, and I still haven't seen everything that's in this box. A few things have been spoiled for me. However, I'm going to put my hand in this box and pull something out, and that something is from Nordic Semiconductor. Nordic Thingy 52 IoT sensor kit. This has the NRF6936 chip in it, if this little badge saying that is anything to judge by. So let's have a quick look at it. Wow, there really wasn't much in the box. This is everything that was in there, and it looks like, you know, a little rubber thing with Nordic Semiconductor written on it. But when you turn it round, you see there is a LiPo battery in there and a little circuit board. And upon further inspection, there is a circuit board in here which has the Nordic Semiconductor chip on it, along with a button and a few other things you can attach to it using pins, as you can see here, as well as a micro USB cable. And there is a little switch here, which when I switch it, it flashes at me. But as always, I'm just going to have a very quick look and see what this is, because as much as I'd like to pretend I know everything about all things, I actually know very little about most things. So I'm going to have a look it up, and then we will see who is going to win this. Okay, I may have spent a little bit longer looking at this than I meant to. This thing is super awesome. I had heard of this at one point. I remember it showing up, and I think I may have even written about it as part of a roundup of IoT kits at some point, but I never really paid too much close attention to it. I haven't dug too deep into everything that you can do with it, but I mean, it's a Nordic Semiconductor system on chip. That means you're open to use the Nordic Semiconductor SDK, and anyone who's messed with their stuff before knows that their tools are pretty powerful. As I have said many times in the past, I'm not all that familiar with Nordic in terms of how you use the software stuff, but anyway, There's just a stock kind of app that you can use called the Thingy app, and I'm recording my phone screen right now, so hopefully you'll be able to see what I am seeing. And this thing is chock full of sensors. This tiny little block has a temperature sensor, it has a pressure sensor, humidity sensor, an air quality sensor, and color intensity. Not fully sure what that is. But maybe actually that's a light sensor that's sensing. Nope, okay, I'm waffling. So as you're hopefully seeing now, it gives you a bunch of readings that it is passing to my phone via Bluetooth Low Energy. You can also connect to it just directly using NFC. I haven't tried that. I did notice that the firmware on this needs updating, which if I get round to, I will do before sending it out to the prize winner. But yeah, this is a super cool little device. As I say all the time on the show, I don't have much time to mess with things, and the messing with IoT devices is something that I've done somewhat in the past, but I've always built them from scratch using a Node MCU and various other sensors on a breadboard. This is an all-in-one little device for learning about IoT, Bluetooth Low Energy, or is it Bluetooth 5? I need to check, I can't remember. It doesn't matter, it's very cool. We have a prize, but what we need now is a winner. And through the magic of Excel and random number generation, our prize winner this week is Don Core, someone whose name I find somewhat familiar. I think you've commented on videos before. And yes, I have the same problem, by the way, with the Pi 400. I don't need one, but I definitely need one. Anyway, we'll be in touch as to how we can get this thing out to you. This is a very cool little device, and I hope you have a lot of fun with it. As always, anyone that comments on our videos will be entered into the mystery box competition. But for now, let's get on with the rest of the show. And now moving on to a few projects that I've seen this week, beginning on the Raspberry Pi project subreddit. And this is a post about conditioning wild magpies to trade bottle caps for food using a Raspberry Pi automated dispenser. And this link takes you to CrossMinds, but the video that is posted on CrossMinds is this YouTube video from Hans Forsberg. And I will play it in the background while I talk about how much I love things like this. Now, I have a preoccupation with crows. There are many, many crows in the park next to us, and I know people say you shouldn't do this, but we have been slowly trading them to come and take peanuts from us. We love them. They are intelligent birds, and yeah, there's many reasons to love crows. And I've seen a few automated kits like this. There was a very famous post a few years ago that blew up, and I think the guy even did a TED talk about training crows to do exactly this. This one is a little different. It uses a Raspberry Pi, as it mentions in the Pi project's thing, and it has some 3D printed parts in order to make it all work. Now, this video is it for now. It's just a video of it in operation, and it is, of course, wonderful. I love things like this. One of my favorite things I had on video as a child was a very similar thing about how smart squirrels are and how they can get food based on puzzles that they have to complete. But this is something that at this early stage is just something nice to look at. However, there may be more from this project in the future. And that is because in the description of the video he mentions he may describe the evolution of his work together with plans and details of the hardware and software on this channel, which means there may be further videos describing how this thing all fits together. And even further down in the comments I noticed one where someone was saying how much it was an inspiring project, which I absolutely agree on. This is just like, behind music making synth things, crows are probably my second favorite thing in the world. I do realize I just said that music synthy things and then crows are my two favorite things in the world, and I have to wonder where my son fits into that list. I may have made an error. Anyway, in a reply to this comment, Hans said he might live stream the system and includes how he operates the GUI. So he specifically asks, would that be interesting? So if you are someone that watches the show and you would find it interesting, maybe dig out the URL to this video, which will of course be in the show notes in the description of this video, and maybe head over here and reply saying, yes, we would like to see that, because that's something that I am definitely going to do. And once again, during the filming of this episode, I've noticed that I made an error here. While the post was recent, the video was quite old, so that broadcast I was just talking about, they're already here. Look, there are various live broadcasts of this on the channel. So once you've been to that video, just head to Hans Forsberg's channel and you will find there are him talking about how he trained the birds. There's experimental live broadcasts here and here, some with the GUI. Yes. This channel already has a bunch of cool information about this, and as soon as I finish filming the show, I'm going to watch all of it. Anyway, I will leave a link to this Raspberry Pi project's post. I don't think the original maker is active in the comments, but there's sometimes interesting stuff in the comments anyway, and I will also, of course, leave a link to the video itself. And yes, like I say, head to the channel to find the live streams and all of the stuff that I haven't watched yet. No idea what it's like, but it's exciting. Now we are moving on to one of my favorite music-based projects I've seen recently, and you know how I feel about those. I look up a lot of these, but this is a fantastic combination of a Raspberry Pi with a DJ mixing controller. And the article on DJ Tech Tools is called Building a Standalone Mixer with DDJ-400 with a Raspberry Pi and Mix, which is open source audio software for Linux. I want to give a very quick primer just in case anyone watching the show isn't too familiar with how controllers work. If you're using a piece of audio software on your computer, you can get controllers, which you've probably seen before, which are a bunch of buttons and dials, which are essentially just buttons and potentiometers like you use with your Arduino. But it converts those into MIDI signals that the computer can understand. Now, these days, most of them work via USB port, but a lot of them still have actual MIDI cables that you can plug into a MIDI adapter on the computer. And that allows you to control what is happening. You know, turn volume up, turn volume down, twist knobs and dials, press pads. I use it to make hip hop. I know I don't look like someone who makes hip hop, but the pads are very useful for triggering samples and drums. This is essentially a MIDI controller, but with a bit more built in. It's designed to work with Pioneer's DJ software, and you plug it into a computer via a USB cable. But it has a lot more functionality than just a MIDI controller. It has an onboard effect unit, and I believe an onboard sampler as well. It's been a while since I've looked up this particular controller. I was kind of hyped about it when I first heard about it, but I don't really have any need for a DJ controller. I'm not doing DJ sets anytime soon. But the way they work is fantastic. It's a blend of MIDI and actual live audio processing. Now, with that out of the way, what you are seeing here is a Raspberry Pi mounted onto the controller, and the USB port is just being plugged into the Raspberry Pi. So that is the computer, because Raspberry Pis are computers. But it's in a smaller form factor that can clip directly onto the deck. This makes it completely portable. This means that you don't need to take a separate large laptop or computer with you to do DJ sets. And as you can see, it's quite a tidy project. There's a Raspberry Pi here with what looks like a cooling fan and a touch screen case with an 800 by 480 pixel screen, which is a touch screen, of course. And that is attached to the DJ mixer via a USB A to B cable. And here are the audio outs that will go to your speakers. It's tidy, it's small, it's not your average DIY project, but it is absolutely as valid. I really like this, and of course, I'm a bit of a sucker for music-based things, but I think this idea of taking something that works with a computer and then taking the computer out of it, sort of, by putting a tiny little computer onto it, is something that we can do in lots and lots of projects. And it's something I'm very excited to try. I don't have a Pioneer DJ mixing desk, but I do have an Akai MIDI controller. And now this is in the MPC form factor, and it's served me well for a good 13 years now. It is old, it is full of dust, it is creaky, it needs cleaning, it needs a lot of love and work. However, I'm not necessarily interested in making a DJ setup, but if you plugged a Raspberry Pi into this with some kind of sampling software or a lightweight DAW, digital audio workstation, you could do the same thing. Clip the Pi on, have it standing here, have a completely standalone workstation where you can make things. Now, would it be as good as this? No. The DDJ-400 is an amazing piece of kit, and it's designed for DJing, and Mix is also designed for DJing. There's a lot about this that makes it a very good standalone project, but it is inspiring, and that is one of the things, as I have always said, I love. So this article on DJ Tech Tools is fairly full. It tells you everything that was done to make this thing work. And it was actually written by the builder themselves. Time Waster NL is the person behind this, and they have an active Reddit profile you can find by following a link from this article. So you can see what he is saying about it on Reddit as well. Anyway, I probably spent way too long on this because I find it super exciting, but there will be a link to it in the description as always. Moving on to a project on the Arduino subreddit, and it's one that I find special for a number of reasons. Firstly, the title alone. This is someone's first project, and it is a Lua gadget inspired by Watch Dogs. Now, there's two things there that I already like. I love it when people share their early projects. I think it's a very bold thing to do, and it's a very nice thing to do to show that you are in the beginning stages of learning something, and I hope that most people are happy with these posts. I know sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming when your favorite forum is full of people showing their first blinking LED sketch, but we were all there at some point, and it's a nice thing to know that people are still getting into this and learning about it. The second part of it is the fact that it's from Watch Dogs, which is a game that I really enjoyed. I'd never really played the second one, but yeah, Watch Dogs was a good game. Haven't played the new one yet. Here's where it gets really nice. I'm 13, so yeah, it looks bad. I'm not professional, but I'm really proud of this since this has been my dream since I was 8. Now, that alone is enough to make me quite happy. It really pleases me that there are people so young that are so interested in this kind of stuff, but what makes me even happier is the comment section below. Because it's mostly positive. I mean, okay, this is Reddit. It's not going to be 100% positive. But there's a lot of people in here that are basically saying this is great, that they love it. There's other people who are around the same age that want to get into it. And even some of the people that are being a little bit rude are, you know, mostly actually making useful suggestions. Now, I haven't played the video yet because my internet was playing up just before. Oh, it appears like it might be working, so let's just leave it. And there it is. As you can see, it's a lure device. You throw it, you press a button, and it makes a beep. The idea being that the people you're trying to sneak past will look at that instead of looking at you. It's a simple project, but that's not the point. For someone to, for their very first project, pick out a wireless controller and get it all working, put it together in a bundle that stands alone, it's actually pretty impressive. I don't think I was doing anything quite that fancy with Arduinos when I started out, and I started out as an adult. So I'll leave a link to this in the description. I wanted to highlight it not just because it's a cool little project, but because things like this are one of the major draws for me. If I was able to work in education, I'd probably want to work with younger people who are interested in this kind of stuff, because enthusiasm is infectious. I obviously have it for certain things, but seeing this has kind of made my week. It's nice. Oh, cool. Okay, there's a base, there's some feet, I'm guessing. Oh, it's going to be a little figurine. Fantastic. Oh, I love miniatures. I love this kind of stuff. Oh, it looks like it's going to be a lady as well. Oh, maybe it's going to be Tracer from Overwatch, actually. It's possible. Oh, no. Moving on to the Michael Reeves subreddit, and I'm sure all of you are aware of Michael Reeves. I personally love him. I know a lot of people hate him. His YouTube channel is my kind of humor. I do like it a lot. But the Michael Reeves subreddit is full of people who are very talented in their own right.
We are seniors at Johns Creek High School, and this is Chatterbox.
So I've muted it because I'd rather you actually go and watch the video yourself. This is a project that seniors from high school are making, and it's something that had actually occurred to me for completely different reasons. As you all know, I live in Germany and I don't speak German perfectly at all, and for obvious reasons most people are wearing masks these days, and my comprehension of German has plummeted. I found it very difficult, which made me instantly think, like, this must be horrific for people who lip read or rely on seeing people's faces in order to work out what they are saying. This project is a really quite complex project, and I'm really impressed that these are seniors in high school that are putting it together. But then again, like I just said before, I started doing all this kind of stuff as an adult, and I know a lot of kids these days are really, really talented when it comes to computer science. So moving over to the official video, you can see how this thing works. It is a face mask which displays what is being said on an LED matrix in the front. And the way they are doing it is by using speech recognition software. Now, the basic operation of this thing is that there is a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino that I think the Arduino is powering the LED matrix, but the Raspberry Pi is using the Google API for converting speech into text. It's the same thing we all have in our mobile phones if you have an Android mobile phone. But yeah, this is a fantastic project, not only because it is, again, something that young people are doing, and recently, I don't know if it's because I have a child, but whenever I see these projects, they mean far more to me than they used to. I'm really happy that people out there are doing this. And the other side of it is that I don't know if any of you have fiddled around with Google's APIs much. I've done a little bit of it. I have actually messed with the text-to-speech API for a project some time ago. More recently, I've been working with the Google Documents API quite extensively, and it's not simple stuff. They say in the Reddit comments here that this is actually one of the first times, if not the first programming project they ever had. Yes, the first programming project ever, and Michael Reeves definitely inspired me. But yes, I'll leave a link to this project in the description. The Reddit thread has this YouTube video in. It's part of the playlist as well, so you can also see other entrants and similar things to this project. Hey look, it's Moe's Tavern from The Simpsons. Wait. Hedgehog? Well, this 3D print is very cool, but we all know what we really want to see. Yes! Moving on to both a tutorial and project on the Electromaker website. Now, the DIY IR module is by Tarantula3, and it is a lot more than just a simple tutorial. Yes, this does teach you how to make your own infrared module from scratch. And as you can see from the image up here, this is one that isn't so much done on a breadboard, this is actually getting a PCB and making it yourself. But the tutorial aspect is really quite complete. There is also a video, but it is all written up here, which tells you the components used for the project and then what each component does and how it works. I haven't really come across any other things that sort of remake the kind of sensors that you get in an Arduino starter kit in such detail like this. And yeah, it takes you through essentially all of the parts required to make one of these things. And yeah, I mean, these are a photo resistor and an LED and a little op amp is the main components for this. And yeah, it takes you through the board and the Gerber files for you to download as well, so you can get your own printed if you want. As well as the principle of working. So this is, again, if you are like me, who came more from the hardware than the electrical engineering side of it, I actually spent a hell of a long time making circuits before I ever looked at a chart like this and it made any sense to me. I didn't come at it from an academic side, I came at it from a kind of like following wires on a breadboard side until this made sense. This is something that I think, had I got to it much earlier in my tinkering, it would have helped me understand a lot of things. So this is a really well put together tutorial. As I said, there is a video version of it as well, and I will leave a link to it in the description of this video. And now a project on the Raspberry Pi subreddit, which is converting an old Lomo LCA camera into a digital Raspberry Pi camera. Now, lomography, if you're not familiar, is photos taken using these kind of cameras. They weren't particularly expensive, but they had this kind of quirk to them, and this article actually describes it quite well on My Modern Met. It was essentially discovered by accident with a group of Viennese students who discovered the Lomo compact automat camera while on vacation in Prague. And the thing about Lomo that sort of made it interesting is actually not just the lens, it's the film as well. And I wonder sort of how the Raspberry Pi is going to account for that. But yeah, Lomo photography has a very distinct style, and this is a project that takes a Lomo camera, which presumably is old and broken, and tries to put a Raspberry Pi inside it. Now, I'm well aware that there are certain people who are into cameras that might think this is sacrilege, but I'm really quite into upcycling and changing things. As I've said in the past, I'm a fan of upscaling antique radios to put digital radios inside them, and this to me is no different. So the annotated gallery goes through the teardown and then 3D printing a new case to fit it all in. And this is an in-progress project. It's by no means close to being finished yet. But even at this stage, I wanted to show it because it's just so cool. It really appeals to me to keep this form factor and create a new digital camera. Now, as I said at the start, this is moving away from lomography. The Raspberry Pi probably isn't going to be able to do that. I'm sure there are filters that kind of emulate it, but that's not the point. This is taking something old and using its body for something new, something, as I've said, I'm totally for. I will leave a link to the Reddit thread where the person that built this has a long post here talking about what they were doing, and is also quite active in the comments replying to people's questions. And finally, a DIY project which mutes the microphone on the computer when the door is opened. And this is a project from Samuel on the Static Turtle, which is a website I did not know about until today, and it is one of the many projects inspired by lockdown. The article, which I will skim through now, I really advise you go and look at this one, it is fascinating, is basically down to the fact that Samuel is now in lockdown and has to do classes over Zoom, and doesn't want people barging into the room or for the door to open and for noise from outside to disturb the class. So the idea was to use a little AT-Tiny in order to detect when the door opens and closes. Now the AT-Tiny, as you can see, is connected to the USB port right here, and there is also a momentary button and a long lead attaching a magnet sensor to the door. Now this is a very informative tutorial. It goes through every single step of how it works, including the software that is used to do the audio side on the computer and all of the code. But I also just wanted to include it because yeah, this is something that appeals to me. I am currently, in my spare time, which of course I don't have very much of, messing around with bare microcontrollers. It's something that we've covered on the show before. I'm actually currently using the ATmega328P, which is in the Arduino Uno, because they're easy. You can just use the Arduino Uno to change the fuses in it if you want, and then pop it out, put it on a breadboard. You can even use another Arduino to program it. This uses an AT-Tiny 85, which is another AVR chip, and one that if I did have, I could do exactly the same thing with. So if you are interested in actual microcontroller programming rather than always using a development board, this is something that will interest you. But once again, just by simple virtue of the fact that this is someone talking about classes online, I wonder how old this person is, and they're already programming AT-Tiny 85 chips. It's amazing. I'm sorry, I'm very overwhelmed this episode with joy about the younger generation making cool things. That was our show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful to you. As always, I'd love to hear what you were up to. Put it in the comments of this video, which will of course enter you to the mystery box competition. And one thing I haven't really talked about too much on this show, but if you do have projects that you feel like writing up, take a look at electromaker.io. You can make an account there and log your projects on the site as well. But for now, I hope you have a creative week wherever you are. Take care, and I'll see you soon.